Hi, I'm Henry Carvajalis. Today we'll be talking about transforming ideas into reality, a practical guide to generative AI. Let's get started. So, welcome back. In today's discussion, we will talk about factors to consider when forming your team. There's a lot to take into consideration because, we're looking for that great Gen AI developer, architect, project manager. However, there are some few things you should take into consider, and those are the things we'll be talking about in this lesson. So, let's get started. Now, you may be asking yourself, how do I form the team? First, there are several things you just have to take into consideration. One, understand that a lot of the technology that you are trying to use or things that you're learning is new. New as in the last 2 to 3 years, right? Take, for example, LangChain, a very popular Python package that enabled the ability. To me, it was one of the first to enable the ability where you can connect to a model, connect to a data, and then establish a prompt, right? All within that one framework. Well, guess what? That was released just in October 2022. So it is very, very new, right? A lot of the databases that you're probably using already are now enabling features to better perform and handle Gen AI work. Right, a lot of that stuff is new. A lot of that stuff is unknown. So definitely take that into consideration. The second thing is look at the technical skills and capabilities of Gen AI as a layer that rests on top of what you already know. You're not fundamentally relearning something. You are enhancing it by what you already know and know how to do well. Right, and just really learning the intricacies of the technology and seeing how best to configure that new piece of technology into your already existing framework, architect, or process. So let's learn more. As I mentioned before, Gen AI is a layer. It rests on top of what you already know. Are there cases where there is a whole new skill set for you to learn from? Yes, to a certain degree. What you're seeing here are just 3 examples of how Gen AI is just adding on to what you already know, even for something that is new in this day and age. For example, prompt engineers. Well, a lot of what they use are programming language, so it can be whatever that may be within your organization, and really understanding the semantics of how to manipulate the responses you have. It's not a complete science where you need to know the intricacies of how the model is working. It is more so you are guiding the model to behave in a certain manner to give you the most optimal results, and a lot of that is just semantics via prompt engineering. And then the new thing to add to that would be really understanding just the whole Gen AI framework and technology. Now, let's look at MLOps and cloud engineers, right? Infrastructure as code. They're setting up your cloud resources. They're setting up platforms for you to collaborate with other developers. So a lot of that is the same. You're just now adding on, well, how do I insert this Gen AI technology in my ecosystem? Whatever cloud provider you may have, right? There are Gen AI features that are now becoming available. For data scientists and analysts, similar to the prior 2, you are seeing very similar things as well. For example, programming language, what are they using? You're still using that. Using collaboration platforms for code sharing and testing. You're going through the process of deploying your models and managing those models. No different than what you've been doing with machine learning, right? Now, the add-on is really understanding, being familiar with large language models or your foundational models. When is one preferred over the other, as well as being familiar with the Gen AI framework, like, for example, Retrieval-Augmented Generation, or as it's commonly referred to as RAG. Those are just some things that you're just now adding on top of your already existing skill set. Now, you understand that Gen AI is a layer. It is something you add on. You feel confident that you have all the skill sets you need and you're allowing enough runway for learning new things, right? So what does a team look like now? Well, this is an example of an actual project I worked with for a pharmaceutical client. And here are all the positions and in addition to the activities that each position performed. Right, so if you're familiar with a technical project, you have your technical developers that are specific to certain areas. For example, cloud engineering, your data scientist, software developer, and your new one, prompt engineer. You still have a project manager. And if you're in consulting like I am, then you also have your sponsors and the team from the client you're serving that are aiding you in whatever shape or form. As you can see here, these are just various activities that were done pertaining to each position. Now, if you look at the dots associated to each role, you can see in the team that I was operating off who was really responsible for that. I myself was the one in red, so I was fulfilling a lot of different roles at the same time. Was it stressful? Was it a lot? Yes. However, I definitely give a shout out to the project manager to really separating myself and giving me the space to really be able to sit down and get the work done, because it was just a lot of things that even I didn't know. It was relatively new. How do you better monitor your infrastructure? Because as people are now seeing today, developing a GenAI solution is very expensive, and it's expensive because of the infrastructure that you're requiring, i.e. specifically the GPUs. So overall, you can see that it is possible with current skill sets. It's just a matter of really allowing that runtime so that your team can get familiar with the technology and get up and running as quickly as possible. Now, let's say you are a project manager and you are tasked to form a GenAI team. Are you building a model, right? You hear people probably say something along the lines of like, oh, we can build a good GenAI solution with the best model. Is that implying that you're building a brand new model from scratch? Well, you may want to pump the brakes a little bit and really take into consideration the implication of that decision. What you're looking at is what I like to call my transit map to GenAI model building. At the very lower left-hand corner, you're starting with what I call pre-trained. And what I'm referring to that is really leveraging your foundational models that have been tried and true. Think of your Llama 3, your ChatGPTs, et cetera, your Geminis. They've been created by big tech companies. They've invested a lot of money in that. Why, recreate the wheel when you can't compete with those type of resources? So they did a lot of the heavy lifting, and in that space, you're really using it for what it is to figure out, can it give you or do the things that you want it to do. As you progress through that, you may be looking to, well, I wanted to enhance what I already have. This could be through prompt engineering, having your models or providing to your models specific instructions on how to behave, a persona sort of way, hi, my name is Henry. I am an HR specialist and I do X, Y, and Z. The next two stages are optional as well, where you are now implementing RAG and you are, instead of using the model for what it is, you're trying to use that model to really enhance the user experience within your organization, because the value of RAG is the fact that the model was never trained with your data. And so by having it answer or do things in relation to data that it can reference, it can give you more specific, insightful information. What is your parental HR policy? How much, days of leave can I be in a hole, et cetera, et cetera. Hyperparameter tuning is now you're kind of tinkering with the underlying I would say filters that really created your model in the beginning. You're not doing full-blown recreating the entire model, but you're adjusting how it was structured to create the final outcome. Fine-tuning is now adding more into that complexity where you're now feeding it specific data for it to reference. You're not recreating the whole model, but there are techniques to give it specific update specific areas of it so that it can operate as if it knows that information instead of feeding it the data to make that informed decision based on the question it was asked. Last but not least is a custom model, right? As you've noticed, if you've looked at that blue dot, you'll notice that it gradually increases. That means there is more data needed in order for it to really get more bang for your buck. And at that level, you really need to ask the hard question: is it really worth me spending tens of thousands for a 1%, 2% increase in performance for recommendations or sales, right? I don't know. That's something that you would need to take into consideration. Now, other things, to kind of hit home is, think of your Bloomberg GPT. It took roughly 50 days for it to be created. Do you have 50 days for a model to be created from scratch? How big of a model are you trying to get? How much data do you even have available, right? Now, in order for it to operate or create your models more efficiently and quickly, again, you need to really request a lot of GPUs. That is the component that will be doing a lot of your magic, right? The processing of the models and the data and making sure that it is generating a result, right? It's heavy on GPUs. Here's an example of just using one GPU for 10 hours, right? And that's $175. Now, just do the math between that and 50 days. That's assuming everything went well, that there's no changes, and you kind of have your end result. Also, take into consideration your flagship models. Take, for example, ChatGPT, where it was released in June 2018. Now, fast forward for their first GPT version. Now, fast forward to today, where it's GPT 4.0, right? So you have roughly almost 6 years of a company managing a model, updating that model, enhancing that model, refining that model, et cetera, right? So think about the implications of creating your own model and then the long-term effect of maintaining that model so it's still maintained, so it is still operational and relevant for your organization. What you're looking at is an example application of applying pre-trained with a little bit of RAG, where it is just using a foundational model, provided a simple prompt, and then referencing a data storage with resumes. And so with that, I can then ask it questions against it to figure out who are people that have PMP or have Scrum Master, right? In the event for maybe I have a proposal that I need to write for, or a project needs a project manager or a Scrum Master, I can quickly find and select the people that are more in line with those client requirements, right? So again, it was using a pre-trained model with a RAG framework, and I was able to create this simple application. Well, thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Feel free to ask me any question, and until then, have a great day, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye. And then you have, if you are in consulting, you may have your sponsor and your actual counterparts. Goku! As you can see here, these are just various activities that were done from each role.